The time has arrived, Indiana fans. The Hoosiers, for the first time in the history of the universe, of the galaxy, of the planets, will be in the college football playoff. And it's only like a little drive up the state of Indiana. The Hoosiers, your Indiana football team, will take on Notre Dame Friday night, 8 Eastern, ESPN, ABC. The hype is real. You can feel it coursing through everyone's veins. And kickoff is only a couple of days away. Matt and I are going to give you everything you need for this matchup. We're going to dive into the Hoosiers and the Fighting Irish. We're going to talk about some matchups. We're going to talk about some numbers. We're going to talk about maybe some sentimental stuff. We're going to talk about some narratives that we think are complete and utter crap. I don't know where they're coming from. We're going to chat about them a little bit. We're going to give you a college football playoff pick or two for Friday and Saturday's games as well, and so much more here on episode 339 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for IU sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. Here I am, your host, Nithin Krishnan. Along with me is my other host, Matt Lukens. Matt, look, the time is here. We've probably watched more IU football than anyone else that you can think of over the last 10 years or so. And IU's in the college football playoff, and they're going to face Notre Dame. And Curt Cignetti's made it clear they're not satisfied. The job's not done. What are your thoughts going into this Friday game in prime time against Notre Dame?
Well, not to steal James Franklin's number here, but got to go 1-0 this week. And all you can be thinking about is beat Notre Dame, beat Notre Dame, beat Notre Dame, beat Notre Dame. That's it. I like that I saw that they took phones away for practice, and I'm hoping that the seniors really greeted that with a sense of dignity and respect that it deserved to be like, guys, we're on the precipice of doing something amazing. Let's pour our absolute heart and soul into this, right? Let's forget all the girls at Kilroy's you talked to last weekend. Forget all of the friends in all of the and I quote friends
Yeah,
in you know you know
all the
Delta
bla- all the,
Gamma.
all the
Oh,
blackjack games with Trey Galloway in the rec center.
exactly. No, let's not. Let's. I don't even want to. That's a bottle I don't want to open up.
Whoops.
And
All right,
it's
all right,
fine.
all right.
Anyways, look, it seems like from the outside looking in, they're treating this, like I said, with the dignity and respect that a being, you know what? Let me finish my thought. Being the fifth or one of the first five Big Ten teams to qualify for a college football playoff. Which, let me repeat that again. Indiana University football is one of the first five programs to qualify for the college football
There are
playoff.
only
Not
four others.
Wisconsin, not Iowa,
That's right.
not
Illinois,
not not Illinois, not even USC or
Minnesota,
UCLA.
yeah, exactly. Washington, year one, I guess the expectations were kind of low, but
Okay, so Washington's been there, but they weren't a part of the Big Ten when they got there, so
yeah,
that won't count. But
right.
like off the top of my head,
At
Michigan
least as
State,
far as the classic,
Michigan,
yep,
Ohio State, now Penn State and IU are the five
yep,
that have made it to a college football playoff.
yep.
And the fact that Indiana's even approaching anywhere near these heights is just ridiculous to me. But coming off the back of a 3-9 year to be doing this is absolutely bonkers, bonkers. And I mean, you brought up basketball for a second earlier. Is putting a gigantic target on Mike Woodson's back because we've given him 3 years to rebuild the program, and you're seeing how things are going now for basketball. And you saw how somebody knows what the hell they're doing and knows what he's doing with transfer portal, especially being able to turn around a football program, which
Yeah.
is much harder to turn around in 1 year. In 1 year, from a 3-9 team, literally playing at Notre Dame in South Bend for a chance to go play a injured Georgia team for a chance at making the semifinal of the college football playoff.
If Indiana wins, they're going to be underdogs by less against Georgia than they will against Notre Dame. That's just
I
the look
agree.
ahead.
I
And
believe
it's
so.
what
Yeah.
there are. You can bet on it right now if you want. The look ahead is up. It looks like Indiana will be something like a 6 point underdog if if they beat Notre Dame. Against Georgia, the Hoosiers will be a 6 point underdog. Notre Dame will be favored, even though the game's in New Orleans. We'll see how things go if things change, but um, we're not going to talk
God, I want to
about
go to Notre Dame
that.
so bad.
We're not going to
I
talk
would.
about that witchcraft
Oh
Notre
my
Dame
God.
winning.
I would fly. I would. The devil inside me would have to talk me out, or the angel inside me would have to talk me out of the devil wanting to go to New Orleans to party it up and then watch my Hoosiers beat the Georgia Bulldogs, who I
Whew.
grew up hating. For you guys don't know the lore, I grew up a Florida Gators fan.
Yes, you
So I
did.
absolutely despise the Georgia Bulldogs. I hate them with my heart and soul.
You're just one win away, Matt. You're one win away
Oh,
in South Bend
oh,
against Notre Dame team that I don't know. 7.5 points is a lot.
look,
And
Nithin, it's the worst time to be playing Notre Dame too because they got Jesus on their side because it's Christmas coming up, and he's hopefully not feeling like
I
handing
don't
out
know,
too
man.
many Christmas gifts before the 25th.
You say that, but like you talked about Curt Cignetti for a minute. It's like, why is he great? And you talked about how it's a turnaround from a 3-9 season, right? Well, it's actually
Right.
not, right? It's actually a turnaround from what? A 12-3 season? Well, that's way too many games. An 11-2 season last year at JMU, right? And
Yeah.
JMU's a proper group of five team. And you see the respect the group of five teams got this year, whether it's Boise State or Army or Navy, right? Like, it was an 11-2 football team last year, and it was really 11-1 because they lost their bowl game after Cignetti came to IU. So like, it was an
Yeah.
11-1 James Madison team, and Curt Cignetti upgraded at a lot of key positions. He upgraded at quarterback.
Yeah.
Full stop.
But the competition upgraded too significantly.
You're
Because I
right.
look, I get it was a G5 thing, but it was Sunbelt. Like let's
You're
not.
absolutely correct. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but like Curt Cignetti proportionally upgraded his roster too, right? It was
Yes,
Curtis
I agree.
Rourke and it was CJ West, who's
Jay West. Yeah.
unbelievable in the nose tackle position. Miles Price and Keyshawn Williams have been absolutely incredible as a 3 and a 4 at wide receiver. While Tyson Lawton came from James Madison, Justice Ellison didn't. He didn't come from
It's
James
Wake
Madison.
Forest.
He's been
Yeah.
awesome. Sean Asbury has been a starter at safety the whole season, right? And he's been a rock solid safety, a big play safety with that amazing pick he had against Nebraska. And what Cignetti does so well that I think 99% of coaches struggle with across all of college sports is just you come in with an identity and then you practice what you preach. And it's so
Right.
basic, it's so fundamental. But this idea of one game at a time and you win up front and you play fast, physical, relentless, and smart, disciplined, poised, and you take it one game at a time. And then he goes out there and he gets guys that fit that billing. You're already seeing it in the transfer portal for next season. Two of his top targets were defensive linemen because Curt Cignetti says you got to win up front. And we've talked about this for 10 years, the last 4 or 5 years on the podcast, where it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is. It doesn't matter how great your receivers are if you cannot block and if you cannot rush the passer and if you cannot stop the run. And in this matchup, I look at Indiana and Notre Dame, and all I can say is Notre Dame might be better in the trenches, but all I'm going to say is I'm not at least wincing at Indiana's chances of pressuring Riley Leonard in this game. I'm
No.
not nervous about Indiana's chances of slowing down or stopping Notre Dame's elite run game with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I at least can go into this game and say Indiana has a shot. And not only does Indiana have a shot, Matt, I'm looking at 7.5, and I think that is absolutely absurd. I
It's
am
disrespectful.
shocked. I am shocked that with two teams that have similar strengths of schedule, I am shocked that with two teams that, you know, have looked about the same all season, Notre Dame played an awful 3.5 hour performance against USC to end the regular season. Meanwhile, Indiana won 66-0, in case you forgot. This is an absurdly disrespectful spread. And Matt, I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm just going to say it right now. We're going to dive into these matchups, but at a high level, like, Indiana's got the better quarterback, college quarterback, right or wrong.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Indiana's got
Probably better pro quarterback too, to be honest.
who's got the better coach? I mean, do you want to call it a wash?
For now, I'll call it a wash, but I still think it's safe. But it's closer than a lot of IU fans
I'll
think.
give Notre Dame the advantage as far as their running backs. Although I'll go into any game with Tyson Lawton and Justice Ellison and Kalen Black. But
I agree.
the receivers and tight ends advantage Indiana compared to Notre Dame.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I don't know. You look at the defenses. I love Notre Dame's defense at the start of the year, but when you lose Benjamin Morrison, who's going to be a first round NFL draft pick, and when you lose someone like Jordan Botello, who was a pass rush game wrecker in the first couple games of the season against A&M and Purdue, especially remember the impact he had against Purdue, where he didn't necessarily put up the box score numbers, but he was in the backfield every single play.
Yeah.
Now, Notre Dame's defense gave up 560 yards to USC to end the regular season. And I'm not sitting here saying that USC is Purdue, but that's a middle of the road football team. I love Indiana's chances of winning this game, Matt. And we're going to dive into matchups here, but just from a headline standpoint, I love Indiana's chances of winning this game. Am I ridiculous to say like 7.5 is nuts?
7.5 is nuts. I agree. It should be closer to three, but or four if you wanted to do that, but whatever. It's free money. Just pick IU to cover. It's literally
It is coming
it's
down. I will say like it's 7. Try to get a 7.5 if you can, today, if
yeah,
possible.
yeah, it's free money at 7.5. But even if IU loses, we're not losing by more than one score. Because again, people are like, "Oh, they got blown out in the Ohio State game."
You didn't get
Okay,
blown out.
yes, we
The
did get blown
score,
out. It was dominating. The score was not indicative of how close that game was or how close the game could have been if our special teams didn't absolutely
yep,
crack themselves
yep.
in the
And maybe
middle
that
part of
happens
that
again.
game.
Maybe that happened. But like
Hey, look, you're
I don't
right.
think it
Maybe that
will
does happen again.
because this is my trust in Cignetti.
I agree.
Cignetti's not Mike Woodson. Cignetti's not Tom Allen. Right? Like you can trust Curt Cignetti to go into a game like this where his team learns from mistakes from a previous game in a big environment. Okay. Special teams had a rough game against Ohio State. You know what? I'm looking forward to seeing James Evans and Nico Radicic on Friday. I'm looking forward. I bet they're going to have a bounce back game. I hope I don't see James Evans too much, but the one punt he has in the fourth quarter, I'm expecting him to absolutely kick the piss out of the ball. So I'm looking
Look,
forward to.
that or we're sending him back to Australia. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, New Zealand. I think.
Is he Kiwi?
Oh my god, I'm gonna look
Oh, that
this
was
up.
very disrespectful.
Also, yeah, just in like so many ways. Like what that was so unnecessary. But I just headline wise,
Look, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm not to put pressure on him, but I'm saying he's going back
what?
home.
No, he's
I
not.
mean,
We're not doing that. We're gonna warmly embrace James Evans with open arms. Yeah, New Zealand. Yes, apologies to
oh
two
no!
countries,
Oh
the entire oceanic region.
no!
No, we're gonna welcome
No!
James Evans with open arms. I just think like when I see this game and when I think in the mindset that this team has, Like I can visualize Indiana going in there. Like this is the toughest opponent Notre Dame has faced this year. This is not the
Yep,
toughest opponent
by
Indiana
far.
has faced
Yeah.
this year.
Nope. I use the
Uh
battle tested one. I use battle tested one, and like, let's be honest. Like, let's be totally honest. The Notre Dame crowd does not scare me at all. At
Compared to
all.
what we've
That's
seen at Ohio State and at Michigan and in Happy Valley over the last 2 seasons,
so
are
why a
you
cheer
kidding?
crowd? And also, IU fans are buying those tickets out pretty significantly.
Which is
So
par for the course when power conference teams go to Notre Dame.
yeah,
Watch Georgia. Like I mean, not teams that routinely play the Irish, like USC and Florida State. Georgia, I remember that game a few years ago. They
the red,
completely Ohio State. That was a couple years ago when Ryan Day had his
red.
flagship win as
Uh,
Ohio State's head coach. Um,
yeah, where's Blue Holtz at?
it's just teams
Where's Blue Holtz at?
teams that don't play Notre Dame much go to Notre Dame when they play Notre Dame at Notre Dame.
Yep.
The fan bases fill it up. And like, even if they didn't, even if it was a unanimous Notre Dame crowd, I still wouldn't be as
It's still,
nervous.
it's
And
not
again,
as scary.
I understand Cignetti wasn't the coach in 23 when Indiana went to Michigan, when Indiana went to Penn State.
But the players
A
are
lot of
still
the
there.
players are there. You can talk to Josh Sanguinetti. You can talk to Carter Smith. You can talk to Bray Lynch. I pay a lot of attention to the offensive line
Yeah.
and several offensive line. The majority of Indiana's offensive line was on this team in 2023.
Yep.
Mike Haddock
So
holding the fort down at center. Um, and that doesn't get into the fact that Indiana went into a 75,000 person crowd at Michigan State and won by 50. So I just think like this Hoosier team is so much better than a 7.5 point underdog against Notre Dame.
it's
We're
so
gonna
much better than a
du-
lot of people are giving them credit for because again, they don't have a marquee win because of the schedule. If IU had played Penn State, I'm fairly certain that game would have been even. IU could win that. If IU hadn't played at Ohio State and that game was in Bloomington, I think I would have given IU a chance to
yeah,
win
but
that
the
game.
thing is like Notre Dame hasn't done that either. So what am I missing?
You're not missing anything. You're not missing anything. You're missing this. There, if you took the two helmet stickers and you swapped them around, and you put Notre Dame's helmets on the IU schedule, people would be talking about how good this Notre Dame team was and how the Ohio State game was their one bad game that deserved to be in the playoff. And then you'd be talking IU would be on the outside looking in with a loss at home to Northern Illinois.
If Indiana lost to anyone outside of Ohio State, they would be at home right now.
Yeah, we'd be playing in the
Yeah,
Pop Tarts Bowl,
yeah, or the Motor City Bowl, or I don't know. That's not what they call it anymore.
the Holiday Bowl, or something. I don't know.
Matt, when you look at the matchups here, and let's specifically start with Indiana's offense going up against Notre Dame's defense. I think this is a really fascinating side of the ball, right? Like when I look at the two teams here, honestly, I feel like this game is going to come down to how effectively Indiana can move the ball against Notre Dame's defense. Because looking back to the Ohio State game, although IU did score on their opening drive,
Mm,
things kind of crumbled afterwards from an offensive standpoint. Indiana couldn't
right.
protect Curtis Rourke. Indiana couldn't get much going. IU sort of went back to running the ball in the fourth quarter and sort of made it interesting. And then Ryan Day ran it up, doing his job, as Curt Cignetti says, and then Ryan Day lost to Michigan. Um, when you look at Indiana's offense against Notre Dame's defense, what stands out to you? How do you see the Hoosiers poke holes in this Notre Dame defense on Friday night if IU is going to score something, a point total like in the 30s?
Look, don't need to be a rocket scientist. Just go to Notre Dame's last game they played and look at the stats because USC ran for 7 yards a carry on that defense. What are the Hoosiers good at? Well, they're good at getting the ball out of the hands quickly of Curtis Rourke, and they're good at being very efficient with the run game. That last point, the the need to be very efficient with the run game, or they are very, very efficient with the run game, is exactly the game plan that IU needs to have against this Notre Dame team. If IU can establish the run and run the ball very well, the defense. I mean, I don't need to explain this to half of you. Half of you watched football your entire life. You understand how this works. If you can establish the run, then the defense has to put an extra man in the box and open up more opportunities down the field. But I would say the one caveat to that is if you're a team that doesn't like to go vertical as much, then at sometimes it can hinder you. What do you mean by that, Matt? Well, I mean that teams who have to put an extra man in the box will also want to pressure with their corners and stay close to the wide receivers. Now, IU struggled heavily against man at Ohio State. They struggled. The receivers really struggled against that physicality. Notre Dame brings a very similar level of physicality on the defensive end that Ohio State has, and especially their secondary. I would argue that Notre Dame secondary, even with missing their first round corner, is probably still better than Ohio State's. I would argue that. I think they're that good.
I don't think, yeah, I gotta think about it. Caleb
And
Downs is
as
awesome.
Caleb Downs is
Lathan Ransom, I like
fantastic.
him.
Ransom's good. I as a unit, not individuals, as a unit. I don't like Ohio State's corners at all. As a total unit, I like Notre Dame's better. This is probably the best secondary IU's played all season long. Um, so again, I'm interested to see how if the receivers can get separation when Notre Dame has to bite down on the run. Because if they can do that, then all of a sudden IU is going to be able to run up the score on Notre Dame and be able to basically score on a win. Because if you can't jam our receivers off the line and you can't slow down Rourke's like release time and his rhythm, then he's just going to be able to pick this team apart. And then you add in the running game being able to be solid and be a factor, and this should be an IU win. But it all starts with the run. They have to be able to run the ball. They just have to. They have to. They have to. I don't care if you got to bring some weird packages out for this game, and you start pulling a bunch of guards and I personally also of the mind that any wide receiver screen is a run play. It's just an
Hmm.
extended handoff. So it's an extension of the run game. If you have to do that to get some easy 4 or 5 yard games, be my guest. But if anything, if you're setting yourself up against this defense and this secondary, that's a ball hawking secondary. They just had 2 pick sixes against USC. If you're setting yourself up in 3rd and 8, Rourke is going to get killed this game. Either he's going to get sacked or he's going to throw a pick. And neither of those things can happen. So they got to be able to run the ball, and they have to be able to get into short 3rd down or 3rd and manageable situations to keep the defense honest.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, not only did USC put up 560 on Notre Dame at the last week of the regular season, but that was Jaden Mayava. That's their backup quarterback
Yeah,
who threw for 360. Mayava ran for 2 touchdowns as well. That doesn't get into, two different running backs going for 70 each. And that did not include Woody Marks, who's been USC's starting running back all season. I love a lot of what you said there. Um, Notre Dame has been exposed on the ground, especially on a consistent basis this season.
yeah,
And I get it. Like, that happens a little when you play the two service academies, our Army Navy. They're going to run the ball. They're going to puncture you in that way. But
yeah,
when I look at this Notre Dame, like thinking like when you think of Ohio State, when you think of Michigan, when you think of Penn State, Matt and I were talking about this before we started this episode. Like Notre Dame just seems to be a tier below in everything. Even though we're going to their place for a college football playoff game, and they're the 7th seed, and I think they're the 5th ranked team in the country right now. Notre Dame in just every way seems to be a tier below Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State in everything. Like, is that too ridiculous of a statement, Matt? Like, it just feels like they're not the same as Penn State. Forget Ohio State or prime Michigan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't. They're not near a caliber of what a Big Ten team you would need to produce a college football playoff appearance.
Like, that's
And
what I'm saying. And like,
this team is just they're extremely overrated because they have Notre Dame on the helmet. They went in week one and beat a Texas A&M team that didn't know who they were. It was also, let's be honest, not that good, and the SEC's not that good this year, and will be exposed about how not good they are
modern day
this
college football does
this
not
season.
help the SEC.
It doesn't help the
2024
SEC
college
at all.
football doesn't help them.
Like, it would not surprise me in the slightest if three of the four teams in the national semifinals were Big Ten teams.
Me
It would
too.
not surprise me in the slightest.
It would also not surprise me if one of these other teams, or even a couple of them, made a run like Boise or Arizona State, Clemson. Like if Clemson won a couple games, I wouldn't be completely flabbergasted. It's just
Nope.
the SEC is so mediocre this year, and I don't know. Maybe they make some adjustments in future seasons, but Northern Illinois, Matt, went into South Bend. So for they ran for 4.2 yards per carry, 190 on the ground. Navy and Army both put up over 200. Okay, yes, I understand they run the ball a lot, but let's look at Navy for example. Navy was at 5.2 yards per carry. I just
Mm.
don't see it. I just don't see it now. In Notre Dame's defense, they are going to have a closer to full strength Howard Cross up front. Riley Mills is an excellent defensive lineman as well. I think both guys will hear their name called in the NFL draft. You talked about the secondary. One guy who is a real standout. I know you want to talk about the unit as a summation, but one individual I did want to call out was safety Xavier Watts, who I don't think he's as good as Caleb Downs, but the way he surveys the field with Notre Dame's defense, he is so good as far as playing kind of a safety rover position. Um, he's a real problem back as far as the safety position is concerned. So definitely something important there for Indiana to pay attention to. I just think, as you said, Matt, you run the ball, you make Curtis Rourke's life easy, and you put you put some pressure, you put some game pressure on Notre Dame, right? Elijah Surratt, make them uncomfortable. Back shoulder
Mm.
throws, but then you also hit Surratt, as we see when Indiana's offense is really cooking. It's not just all back shoulder stuff. You hit him with the post, you hit him with the slant, you hit him with the screen. All of a sudden, you give them three, four, five, six different route looks, and all of a sudden now Notre Dame's defense is on the back foot. And that's what USC did really well when I went back and watched that game. USC just did a few different things to make Notre Dame uncomfortable all game. And I think that's how you have to win this one against the Fighting Irish. We're going to talk about the other side of this matchup in just a second. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And there are just so many Hoosiers that we can tip our cap to. But Indiana's work in the transfer portal is what has stood out.
Mm.
Let's just keep it in a football capacity, Matt.
Let's do it.
Western Kentucky defensive lineman Jose Wheeler is a MFing bleeping stud. And he went and visited Wisconsin, and he went and visited Texas A&M. But Jose Wheeler, I believe he was the first sort of big time transfer portal commit for Curt Cignetti going into next season. Wheeler committed to the Hoosiers several days ago. There's a part of Wheeler's game that I'm going to try to post on Indiana HQ later today or later this week.
Mhm.
But did you know, Matt, that last season, Jose
Yeah.
Wheeler went into the shoe in
Hmm.
Columbus and sacked
Yeah.
Kyle McCord in the first quarter, forcing
Yeah.
a fumble recovered by Western Kentucky?
I didn't know
Did you
that.
know that in the second half of the game in the shoe in Columbus, Jose Wheeler picked off Ohio State backup Devin Brown? Did
Didn't
you
know that.
know, Matt, that
Uh-huh.
in the first quarter this season in Tuscaloosa at Bryant Denny Stadium, Jose Wheeler sacked Jalen Milroe around the edge, forcing a fumble that Bama recovered?
Didn't know that.
And now Jose Wheeler is an Indiana Hoosier. And again, it lines up with a lot of what Curt Cignetti has preached. It makes sense. You go out there and you win up front. And I'm not saying Jose Wheeler is going to come in here and play every snap. That's not really sustainable football. But between him and Tyreek Tucker, who I cannot wait to watch next season play football in a more expanded role. And then you get Dominique Ratcliffe out of Texas State, who's played 38 career games and had several major performances. I absolutely love Curt Cignetti's approach here in the portal. You know that quarterback is going to be part of the conversation coming up. You know he's going to try. You know Curt Cignetti's going to try to add a receiver. He's already gone out and added Lee Beebe out of UAB in the running back room. Offensive line is going to be a big part of this. I can't wait to see Curt Cignetti and Brian Haynes look for a pass rusher or two. I'm looking forward to seeing that as far as the portal
Mm.
window here coming up. But all in all, I love what Indiana's doing as far as the transfer portal is concerned. Just a lot of sensible moves. By the way, Indiana plays Iowa and Wisconsin next year, right?
Mm.
You think you need to stock up some defensive linemen and linebackers compared to playing
Absolutely.
compared to playing Washington, for example. Like if you go out there and you play the Washington Huskies on your schedule, okay, we need to sort of spread out our defense, 5, 6 DBs on the field. That's not Wisconsin and Iowa. That's not,
Nope.
especially Wisconsin. They're going to revert back to sort of an old school football mentality next season, and probably for the best as far as the badges are concerned. But Curt Cignetti, man, I just, he wins the week. He's doing his thing. A lot of progress, both not only what you saw in this 2024 season, what you're going to see Friday, but in the transfer portal as well. Doing some things that just make a lot of sense, and that sometimes is all it comes down to. Folks, a reminder: if you like to find us on social media, if you like what you're hearing on our podcast, if you don't like what you're hearing on our podcast, leave us a review. Tell a friend. Share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Again, you can find us on social media at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. Like, share, retweet. That kind of stuff is really what helps us grow. On the other hand, Matt, while if we feel fairly comfortable with Indiana's offense against Notre Dame's defense, the other side of the ball is going to be quite fascinating. Notre Dame's got good to great players really across the board as far as their offense is concerned. Quarterback Riley Leonard comes over from Duke. You got the two
Mm.
running backs who are such a handful as far as Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. The receivers are solid. The tight end is dangerous as far as Mitchell Evans is concerned. The O line is all right as well. As you look at Indiana's defense against Notre Dame's offense, what stands out to you?
Well, Notre Dame likes to run the football a lot. Why wouldn't you when you have those two guys in your backfield? IU's defense is actually much better than people give them credit for stopping the run. IU is statistically among the top 5 teams in the country as far as if expected play average running the football. So expected runs. yards per run. IU is in the top five in the country in that statistical category, which is usually very indicative of be having a fantastic rushing defense and having a legit good rushing defense. And so I personally am not super worried about Notre Dame running the football all over us, except for Riley Leonard. That is the one guy that I am most afraid about with the ball because he can move his legs a bit. He is known for being able to run the ball. And IU, over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years of Indiana football, has a distinct inability on defense to be able to stop a rushing quarterback. Now, that is true for 99.8% of college football teams. And I understand that.
It's even in the NFL, it's tough.
And in the NFL, it is tough because again, the quarterback is that extra man defense really
Unaccounted
can't
for.
account for. That being said, I hope that they figure out to become
Account
part
for
of the point, to become part of the 0.2% of college football that can deal maybe just for this game with a running. Well, actually, probably for the next game too, because you're playing Georgia if you win. All right, for the next, then you're playing Drew Howard. Okay, just for the playoffs, if they could just figure it out. I mean, that would be a great Christmas gift to me because if Notre Dame finds themselves relying on Riley Leonard to throw the ball down the field, that is something that Indiana can live with. Like Riley Leonard having to throw the ball vertically down the field and get his balls to get the ball to his receivers is a winning strategy for IU. I don't care how they have to do that, but if you can't stop the run, which I don't think they'll have a problem doing, but if you can't stop the big third down conversions from Leonard with his legs, then it's going to be a long day for the defense because I can already see it now. Like the worst case scenario is that IU literally can't get off the field on defense because Notre Dame is running the ball on first down, getting 3 yards with Love. Then they're throwing it in the flat to the tight end for a 2-yard gain. And then Riley Leonard's picking up 7 yards on 3rd and 5 with his legs. And they just do that down the field over and over and over and over and over again because the only way to really kill IU defense doesn't give up a lot of big plays, right? They don't give up a lot of
correct
50-yard rushes. They don't give up a lot of 70-yard throws. It's
keep
not
things in
something
front
that
of
they
them.
do. They keep things in front of them. And this Notre Dame team can take advantage of that, especially if Riley Leonard can convert those third downs with his legs.
They have 3 guys with over 600 rushing yards this season,
Yep.
and Riley Leonard's in the middle, right? Jeremiah Love's at 949, Riley Leonard's at 721, Jadarian Price at 651, and all 3 guys have a very, very, very healthy yards per carry.
Yep.
Great point. I just think this is where Indiana's rotation up front makes a big difference. A lot of times when we
Yeah.
talk about Indiana football, we're sitting here talking about the quarterback. We're sitting here talking about the receivers, talking about Tevin Coleman reeling off 250 yards or whatever. This game, like, you can probably just pay attention to 4 or 5 guys up front for Indiana. And if it's going well for those 4 or 5 guys on the defensive line, Indiana's going to win this game easily.
Sure.
Mikhail Kamara, CJ West,
Mm-hmm.
James Carpenter, Tyreek Tucker, Linnell Carr, maybe throw in Marcus Burris in there. If those 4, 5, 6 guys are playing well, Indiana's going to win this game by multiple touchdowns. If they're carrying out their assignments as far as keeping Riley Leonard contained, of course the linebackers play a big role in that. The edges play a big role in that. The corners very critical as far as support is concerned. But if they can keep Riley Leonard contained, make sure he's not an X factor in the running game, and if you're getting solid penetration into the backfield to make life tough on Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, it's going to make Notre Dame's offense one dimensional. As we've pointed out before, we love Indiana's receivers over Notre Dame's receivers.
Mm,
Notre Dame's receivers have been a big batch of mid all season. Bo
mhm.
Collins, Jordan Faison, Jaden Thomas, Jaden Greathouse,
Yeah,
Chris Mitchell. It's just
just mid. The
they're
pile
trying to
is
figure it
mid.
out now. Indiana's been exposed a little bit this year against the tight end. Mitchell Evans was a guy a year ago that had a lot of hype surrounding him as far as tight end of the future. He's the next whatever Kelsey Gronk. It's not the case. But with that said, could Mitchell Evans go off for a good game against Indiana if Indiana's paying a crazy amount of attention to Notre Dame's run game, Notre Dame's receivers? It's possible. But again, like you're not, you don't necessarily have to play a perfect game here. If Mitchell Evans hits you for a touchdown, it's really not the end of the world. You can sort of you can make things happen. But I think you covered a lot of the key things really really well with Notre Dame. It's just it's kind of fascinating because like Notre Dame just they have not gotten into a game all season where they've really really had to throw the ball except for maybe Northern. Like
It was Northern. Northern, they couldn't run the ball against Northern or
and,
throw the
and
ball.
and that was
And
the
look how that
one
game turned out.
it was the one game where they kind of trailed for different chunks of the game. And well, Riley Leonard against Northern Illinois threw for about 5 yards an attempt and two interceptions
Yep.
without a passing touchdown. And none of the Notre Dame receivers really separated themselves. You would have thought, okay, against Northern in a somewhat passing game script, one of the Notre Dame receivers would have a very, very healthy performance. That just wasn't the case. Like no one on that Notre Dame receiving core really emerged. Um, so like if Indiana can make Notre Dame one dimensional, it's going to be a huge, 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 huge help for the Hoosiers' cause as far as winning this game is concerned. I will
You
say though,
know,
like, yeah.
one point on the Riley Leonard throwing a pick against Notre Dame. You know, he
Mm-hmm.
threw a pick to a future Hoosier in that game, right?
He threw a pick to
Marion Knighton.
Amarian Knighton in the Northern Illinois game.
Correct. Marion Knighton was
What
the
a! I
basically
did not know that.
as basically the game sealing pick
Woo!
for NIU was caught by
Wow.
American Knighton and returned, and then that's when Northern Illinois kicked the field goal to go up 16-13 and ended up icing the game there.
No kidding. How about that? Good old Mr. Knighton. Speaking of which, I don't know if this is what you said or if you touched on this, but Notre Dame has major kicking problems.
I did not touch on this, but yes, they do. They
Because
can't
you
kick the
said,
ball for.
Amarian Knighton picked it off. I think Notre Dame missed a big kick at the end as well. I think they missed a
Yes, yeah,
62 yarder at the end of that game. But okay, I'll excuse a missed 62-yard kick. But
yeah,
overall,
yeah.
Notre Dame's got kicking problems. On the season, they're under 50% as far as their field goals are concerned. Mitch Jeter is right at 50. He's 6 for 12. And I think there was a video shared on social media yesterday or the day before where Mitch Jeter just like kept hitting the post in front of the media during practice, or he hit the post once or twice or something. Notre Dame might be in a position. You talked about some of their offensive strategy, Matt. Like Notre Dame might be in a position in this game on Friday night where they do play some football math and they do kind of say, hey, look, if we're getting 3.5 yards, if we're getting 3 yards to carry, 4th and 1 and 4th and 2 might be an automatic go for
Yeah.
Notre Dame in
Oh no,
this
it
matchup on
will
Friday,
be.
even though they're the
It's it's
favorites.
it's it's not might. It will be. They do not trust Jeter just to kick the ball. And I wouldn't either, TBH. So, I mean, if it's 4th and 3 at the 45-yard line of IU,
Yeah.
I bet my mortgage that they're going for it or punting it,
And
but
while it
they're
looks
they're
like
not going to be kicking the ball.
and while it looks like it's going to be fairly clear on Friday night, of course, as someone who's from Northwest Indiana, the weather forecast for South Bend is going to change about 40 times between now and kickoff.
Yeah,
Just
you
given
can't
South
look.
Bend's location relative to Lake Michigan, just things change quickly. Um,
Yeah,
but
12 hours for a kickoff will know. That's
yeah,
about it.
I think 12 minutes. The thing is, assume if we do have a clear night on Friday night, it does look like there will be some wind involved, which makes plenty of sense given South Bend's location, Notre Dame Stadium's location. And if that's the case, I'm not sure if Notre Dame's going to even kick the football. I like extra points. Of course, they're not going to be attempting any, but from a field goal standpoint, I'm not sure how much Notre Dame's going to be kicking the ball on Friday night. Um, and this is part of the conversation I wanted to have before we make a prediction here. Just spare me a minute on a couple of narratives that I've heard over the course of the last few days. First of all, like Indiana being some sort of Cinderella story, like I don't see it. Indiana's not a Cinderella. I've seen Cinderellas in college sports before, especially in college basketball. Look, Cincinnati just 4 years ago, making the college football playoff was 100 times more Cinderella than this. Indiana's not a group of five team. I understand the history of the program, but Curt Cignetti came in and he came in from an 11 win group of five team last season. Indiana is lining it up and they're kicking people's backsides all season. They have the top point differential in the country, I believe, or one of the top point differentials, especially when you take games against Power 4 opposition. Forget the FIU game. Forget the Western Illinois game. Indiana's not a Cinderella, okay? It is a Big Ten football program that won a bunch of games in 2020. Yes, historically, the win loss stuff hasn't been great. I don't feel an ounce of Cinderella paying attention to this team all season. Am I crazy? Like, do you feel this mad? Like, okay, Indiana's an underdog, but do you feel like this Cinderella David versus Goliath type thing with Indiana going into this game? Because I really don't.
Yeah, I do, but from a program perspective and not an
A
actual on
team
the field
perspective.
result,
Yeah.
not an individual team perspective. I totally understand the media painting this as a David versus Goliath because it's
God.
kind of true. You have one of the
Curtis Warwick
winningest
was
football programs.
fifth or whatever, ninth in the highest, like in the Heisman.
Look, the results on the field do not matter. Do not matter to the college football
The
neutral.
narratives
Okay,
that matter.
that the narratives that matter to college football neutral is a team that was 3-9 last year and has the losing record in all of college football history is in the playoff playing against one of the 5 or 10 blue bloods of the sports in their own state.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's true.
that that's that and again, Indiana's the basketball program for the state. Notre Dame's the football program for the state. Now the basketball program for the
Purdue's the
state has
engineering program.
produced something. They're the runners
No,
up
no,
the
no, no,
Memphis
no, no,
game.
no, 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 no.
You'll say they are. Yeah.
Purdue is the basketball program in the state.
Currently, but historically,
For the last 20, 30 years, that's been the case.
I wouldn't say for the last 20 years,
20,
but
20
anyways,
for the last 20 years. But that's a different
and,
conversation.
and, and since IU's last Final Four appearance,
Yeah,
yes. I mean,
22
since
years
the
ago.
national championship, 22 years ago. Fine, fine. I'll give it fine. I'll begrudgingly give you that. Even though IU's had more marquee moments. Anyway, never mind. I'm not on yet.
Hmm.
Anyways, what I was saying is this. Yeah, it's a bit of a Cinderella story. Yes, you have a coach that's
Oh,
been
God.
passed up. It is. You have a coach that's been passed up his entire life for almost everything. Finally,
Cinderella.
getting finally getting an opportunity to go to the ball.
Glass slipper
Uh,
gonna fit this? How long before they turn into a pumpkin?
exactly. And that's a little bit of what I was dealing with. But if you watch the team play all year, you will know that they are not anywhere close to
God.
being a Cinderella story, that this was absolutely deserved,
Which,
in fact, and
that
earned
actually,
by
yeah.
every blood, sweat, and tear. But some of the national media will tell you that IU shouldn't be here. I saw Cam Newton get on first take and say some of the stupidest things I've ever said in my life, and I really adore Cam Newton. I think some of the things he has to say is awesome.
Florida legend.
But he has look, just don't get him as long as he's nowhere near laptops, and he'll be fine.
And
No
that takes
laptops
me,
anywhere near Cam Newton, he'll be okay.
I mean, this all takes me to my other narrative that I think is completely fake. I've heard a couple of different people, like prominent people, say recently, I think maybe Fred Glass was one of them, that there's more
Okay.
pressure on Notre Dame to win this game on Friday night. That, oh,
Well,
Notre Dame is the team that's playing with pressure. I I couldn't disagree more. I feel like
okay.
there's
Explain
more. I
explain
feel
it to
like
me.
so to me, if you want to call it even, just like okay, there's about an equal amount of pressure on both teams, fine. I think there's way, 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 way more pressure on Indiana to get this win on Friday night than Notre Dame.
Why?
Notre Dame is where they are right now after a pie on the face, embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois. Also, your team has been injured all season, and you've got to the point that you're at this moment. Marcus Freeman isn't nervous about anything because he just signed an extension earlier this week. Now, granted, he hasn't won anything, but guess what? To get to where they are for Friday night, where they're hosting a CFP game as the fifth ranked team in the country, he's now under contract for the next 6 years. There's nothing he's got to worry about. Riley Leonard knows he's going to play in the NFL next season. Notre Dame fans have enjoyed where they've gotten to this point, and you know Notre Dame's going to be back in the CFP within what the next 2-3 years. I can't say the
Yeah.
same thing about Indiana. I want to. Don't get me wrong. I want to say that Curt Cignetti is going to get Indiana back in the CFP in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons. But as we found out in 2020, or in any point in the history of Indiana football, sustaining success to this point has been impossible. It's been flat out impossible. And look, I want to believe in Curt Cignetti. I trust Curt Cignetti. He's a really, really damn good football coach. I'd take him against any other college football coach in the country. But Tino Sinceri's off to UCLA. The schedule's going to get harder next season. You're going to be the hunted. You're not going to be the hunter any longer going into next season in college football. And you saw how quickly things turned around after 2020. I'm not saying Curt Cignetti is going to get Indiana back into those types of seasons in 21 and 22 and 23. But what I am saying is you're healthy right now. You've got a damn good quarterback throwing the football for you. Your running game and offensive line are working. Your defense is loaded. Brian Haynes is a Broyles Award finalist. Your field goal kicker is reliable within 40 yards. You got to go to South Bend on Friday and win. That's the bottom
I
line.
don't I don't disagree with that point of view, but I think it's even. I know it's a cop out answer, but I think it's even. It's a playoff game.
I get
I
it.
I agree with everything you just said. And I think this is a once in a program kind of opportunity to change
I hope
the
it's not.
narrative,
Right, right.
to
Exactly.
change the narrative.
Exactly.
I think IU can get back here, but then it'll be, oh, IU had another good season. They made it back. Oh, look at them. I wonder if they can go further than they did last time, kind of thing. Or are they still front? Where everybody all season long has been like, oh, IU's a good team, but I don't think they can cut it against the good teams.
And then they
Oh,
went
IU's
to
a good
Ohio
team,
State
but
and
I
kind of
don't.
got whacked, right? Like,
And they kind of proved everybody correct. And so now you have all these talking heads, including people like Brandon Walker and a bunch of other people online who are like, IU has no shot ever of doing anything in this playoff because they went and played one bad game at Ohio State, and it was the only really big game that they played all season long, and they didn't show up.
yeah.
Like if you can go out and prove it against Notre Dame, like
Boom.
it's not it the
The upside,
the
the
narratives around the
reward,
team the narratives around the team will change, which will be nice.
so
But
much.
I think even more importantly is that the belief inside of the program, while it's still very strong,
Yeah.
would have a bit of oomph behind it,
Yes.
right? Going into the most well, this game is the most important game in the history of the program. You win this game,
The
you
next
then
game is.
have the
Yes.
next most
Correct.
important
Correct.
game, right? Um, but being able to kind of find some footing, find a bit of momentum, get the ball rolling.
Get a
Like
flagship win against a great program in South Bend. Like, you want Indiana to have brand bias in the 2025 CFP rankings or the 26 CFP rankings? It starts with winning this game on Friday night.
it's even more than that. It's
Yes,
even more. It's even more.
exactly.
The stakes for this game are even more than that because you can now plant your flag in the state
Yes,
that you are the flagship program for football in the
that's it.
state by
This
going
isn't
by
playing
going.
Tennessee. It's not playing, Georgia.
It's not even just the state of Indiana. It's the local area, right? Because you go Notre Dame's print is national, right? For
Yes.
recruiting, but a lot of their biggest hitters come from Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio. Where does Indiana recruit? Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. If you can go and to Notre Dame and win a playoff game at Notre Dame, the implications for recruiting are gigantic.
Astronomical.
On top of just winning a game in the college football playoff, boosts your recruiting by a bit, right? And not to mention that IU has good NIL, but you go and beat a local recruiting rival in their home place, like, come on,
It's
that's
everything.
humongous. This
There's
opportunity is gigantic. But then again, Notre Dame is playing with the knowledge of that. You understand that?
but I
Like
just feel like,
Notre Dame understands that this game for Notre Dame is not just about being able to compete for a national championship and saving themselves from embarrassment at home. I legitimately think that behind
but they
closed
already
doors,
have gotten embarrassed at
that
home.
staff, but that's no. Here's that staff is realizing what I'm saying and being like it is fight or flight, basically. It's fight. Their fight or flight reflex is kicking in because this is for survival, right? This is not just for this
Competition,
is not
right?
this is not
It's
just competition. This is for a legit foothold in the area, and
yes.
it's not often that Notre Dame gets challenged within the local area
By the
for
way,
that belt, that UFC belt that they have on, right? But that Indiana middleweight championship belt is a title fight for that. And they
yes.
weren't expecting that going into the year. I can guarantee you they weren't expecting to be up for this, right? They weren't expecting to run
It's,
into the Ohio States of the world. They weren't expecting to run into the Michigans of the world. And they certainly weren't expecting to run into the Indianas of the world in this exact kind of situation where they can are all the eyes in the universe is on this game because it's being played on Friday night in prime time, and it's the only thing on basically around the entire country except for the NBA, and nobody watches the NBA anymore apparently, according to ESPN.
It's the numbers are true. It's real.
So all eyes are going to be on this game. It's going to be the most watched college football game
Yeah,
all year up until that point. And for IU, it's the first Notre Dame home game to not be broadcasted on NBC since the beginning of the dawn of time,
yeah,
since dinosaurs were walking the earth.
yeah,
And for IU to roll up in there and possibly, plant a
yeah,
flag
yeah. That's what I'm
on the
saying.
week before Christmas.
That's yeah. It's everything. It's everything, Matt. And by the way, I don't want to skirt the national recruiting implications either. You can go to Florida or Texas or California head to head with a recruit looking at Notre Dame. If you go
Yeah,
to South Bend and win, think that
yeah,
recruit's gonna listen to Curt Cignetti and
yeah,
Brian Haynes and the Indiana staff if Indiana goes to South Bend and wins? Absolutely.
100%. Yeah.
And
And then
so
also,
I mean,
IU
Indiana's already winning a bunch nationally from a recruiting standpoint. It's only going to get better
really,
if you win this game.
I'll save my point that I was going to say for if IU beats
No, just go.
Notre Dame.
Let it fly.
The, yeah, well, I was going to say the IU Georgia game will be the battle for Fernando Mendoza. Is that's because
Oh,
it's
that's
between
right.
IU and Georgia
That's
for
right.
Fernando, and
He's a
if
baller.
those
He's
teams
so
play
good.
each other, he's so good. He's so good. Like IU be in such good hands if he transfers, going from Rourke to Mendoza, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. And so I look at this and I think of the upside and the reward that Indiana gets for a win on Friday night. And I feel like there's just as much pressure, if not more. I think there's more. And again, pressure's not a bad thing. I think, though,
No, not
Curt Cignetti,
necessarily. Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. I just think Curt Cignetti and Curtis Rourke and this receiving core and this defense and this offensive line, like you go into South Bend, man, and you kick their ass like you kick Michigan State's and Nebraska's and Washington. Like there should be no reduction in your standard in this game because you can win this game by 20. You can win it by 30. And if you do, the payoff will be gigantic. Who's the biggest program Indiana's beaten in the last 15 years? Like you beat Michigan a couple times when they were down, to be fair,
Penn State,
and you beat Penn
but that was
State when they were
in a
sort of
bad year.
down, to be fair.
Yeah,
When you take program pedigree plus or times having a good season, like Indiana winning at Notre Dame grabs the headlines. Let's
yeah.
make it happen. Let's make it happen. Matt and I are going to predict this game here, talk a little bit about the other CFP games coming up on Saturday, and then wrap things up. But first, we're going to dive into a little bit of a social media shout out. Folks, just a reminder if you'd like to find us, if you like what you're hearing, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Again, that type of stuff really helps grow our podcast. Like, retweet, comment. That's how we get the views. That's how we grow. Join the masses. We've crossed 10,000 followers on Twitter. I think we got over 320 some odd YouTube subscribers. Compared, I think that's like plus 100 compared to last year. So keep it going, folks. Really appreciate your support. Again, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. Matt on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. Matt, Indiana
Yeah.
is a 7 point underdog as of this morning in the United States. They are plus 220 to win this game. And I stand corrected. They are still plus 7.5 on DraftKings, plus 220 to beat Notre Dame as far as Friday night's matchup is concerned. Indiana is currently eighth in the field with national champion odds of 40 to 1. As Curt Cignetti said, I think last weekend, Indiana's odds of getting to this point were much, much longer than Indiana's odds of winning the national championship from here going forward, which is true.
True. But
I
it's
believe I saw some
statistics.
tickets. I believe I saw some tickets shared around social media of Indiana at something like plus 15,000 or plus 20,000 to make the CFP at the start of the season. And so Curt Cignetti is absolutely correct when he says what he says. The Hoosiers, again, a 7.5 point underdog, Matt, with an over under of 51. So if you do the math, that's like a 28. No, it's like a 29-22 final score, something in that vicinity. Who do you think wins this game on Friday night? And by what score?
Okay, so everybody take a deep breath before I say this. Notre Dame 27, IU 24.
Wow.
Wait, let me explain. Let me explain. Let me explain before you throw your phone out of your car window while driving to work with this podcast. I am not going to be the one that jinxes this. I'm not going to be the one that jinxes this. So I'm going to go with
Oh my
my
gosh.
statistical brain, and I will say Notre Dame wins this because they're at home, and IU covers, and I will not jinx it.
Like, I get
And
it.
then I'll blame Nithin.
Yeah.
That way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
all of the responsibility is off of me if this happens. Right? I've taken responsibility and I've thrown it on the Nithin
In
because
your
you asked me to go first, and that was your problem.
uh, in your hypothetical scenario, does Notre Dame kick a field goal at the buzzer, or is it like Indiana goes down two scores and then makes it interesting?
Uh, 27-24 is Notre Dame missing an extra point.
Oh my gosh.
This is
Is that
IU
is it gonna be
driving.
like a is it gonna be like a back and forth game in your world or
This is Notre Dame's up by two scores,
oh my god.
and IU makes it interesting.
So like kind of like the Ohio State game. So it's sort of similar.
It's sort of similar, but not. Honestly, it's way better than Notre Dame.
I agree. Like I agree. Like honestly, that's probably the starting point for a lot of this. And I think about the Michigan team Indiana played in 23, and I think about the Penn State team that Indiana played in 23. Like those three games, like they felt so like those opponents felt so much better than this Notre Dame team. Right now, Notre Dame has a first round corner, but he's not going to play.
No.
You got three other guys who are projected to go in the top 150 of the NFL draft, and no others in the first round. This is Notre Dame. This is
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame we're talking about. A school that has
Mm-hmm.
turned out numerous great, linemen and NFL level players.
They've had an NFL level player at every single position in that school multiple times
Tight
throughout
end,
history.
Michael Mayer was a first round pick, second round. Like
Yeah.
this roster, and again, this is why I think Notre Dame's kind of playing with house money. Marcus Freeman signed an extension deservedly because he's gotten this team to somehow the number 5 ranking in college football with injuries and with the roster that is young. They're starting a true freshman corner. They're starting young players in offensive line. Indiana's old. Indiana's fast
Yeah.
and strong and old, man. And this is a college football playoff game. I love IU in this matchup on Saturday. Just kidding, Friday night. I
Me too.
love, I
Mm.
love IU in this matchup on Friday night.
You're saying all the things I wanted to say, but I just can't say because I know if I do say them, that won't happen. Because I said that against Ohio State, and all the opposite things happened, and I'm not doing this again. I have been hurt too many times. I will not do
Oh
this.
my gosh. Um, it's just I have so much faith and trust in Curt Cignetti corralling his team, getting everyone locked in, learning from the mistakes in Columbus from a few weeks ago. That's a huge part of my mindset here. Special teams, tighten it up. Offensive line, running backs, pass pro, right? We got it. We got to let Curtis Rourke see the field. We got to let Curtis Rourke throw the ball.
You gotta let Chris
Receivers,
work breathe.
get on get on the same page. Running game, right? What's the mindset? You got to be physical. You got to hunt for blood if you're part of this IU running game on Friday night. And then I think of the special teams, like the kicking problem at Notre Dame is rough. And then I look at how they played against USC, and I look at the game against Northern. Like, if Notre Dame went to USC and just clean their clock, I would be a lot more nervous about Notre Dame. I could sit here and say, look, Northern Illinois was in week 2. Notre Dame has clearly improved and elevated their game. But Northern Illinois was in week 2. You suffered a bunch of injuries, and then you looked extremely vulnerable against USC. 560 yards is hard to do.
And
It's
it's
just hard
anywhere.
to do in any game.
Yeah.
Indiana didn't do that in games where they won by 50. And so when it's all said and done, I have Indiana winning this game 31-13. I think IU goes to South Bend, establishes their running game, looks like Army or Navy in as far as how, like, especially, as far as how effective they were running the football, consistently getting 5, 6, 7 yards a carry. That's what Northern Illinois did. That's what USC did. And Indiana's better than all of those teams by a country mile.
Sure.
You got Carter Smith and Mike Caddick and Bray Lynch and Trey Wedding and Tyler Stevens up front. And I get it. Howard Cross and Riley Mills are going to cause problems as far as the defensive line is concerned. But I'm expecting Indiana's offensive line to hold their ground. Tyson Lawton, Justice Ellison getting yards before and after contact. And once you get things going from that standpoint, just like you scored an opening drive touchdown at Ohio State, I'm expecting Indiana to score an opening drive touchdown here against Notre Dame. And then you improve from that point, not regress. That's
Mm.
how I see Indiana doing in this game. And I think they're going to go into Notre Dame, and I think they're going to by multiple scores. I just don't get it as far as Notre Dame is concerned. And again, as
Look,
you and I have pointed out, Indiana is so much better than Texas A&M. And Texas A&M
yeah.
is by far the toughest team Notre Dame has played in the Notre Dame played in the regular season. And I get it, this game is in South Bend, not in College Station or in Bloomington. But Indiana is by leaps and bounds way better than Texas A&M and USC and Army and Navy.
Well,
So
they're especially better than Game One Texas A&M. No team
no
is
question,
near
it's
nearly as
not
good as they
close.
are in week 13, 14, 15, or whatever heck we're in
Well,
than
especially
they
with
were in
Texas
week
A&M's
one.
quarterback in week 1 now with Houston.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
They made roster changes too. Never mind the fact, yes, the week 1 to week 12 or 13 improvement.
yeah, 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 yeah. True.
Army Navy are good teams. USC's all right. Indiana's 100 times better than all of them.
Yeah.
And I I can't help but think that right now in the Indiana football facilities, they are just so focused, and they're ready to show the entire college football universe what they're capable of. So I love Indiana to win this game by multiple possessions. Um, I'm if Indiana loses, it's going to be because Howard Cross and Riley Mills completely wrecked IU's offensive line, and like you mentioned, Riley Leonard in the running game was too much of a burden. I think that's how Indiana loses this game, and maybe Curtis Rourke's thumb is not as healed as we thought, and he's erratic. and he struggles to move the ball down the field because, like you did say, Notre Dame's secondary is physical. They can rough you up a little bit. They're talented. It's just they're young and sort of unproven. But I love Indiana in this game. I really do.
I agree. I do like IU, but I
Yeah.
could not predict again. Could not predict
Three
in good
other
conscience a
Yeah, I
different way.
got you. I got you, man. Three other CFP games on Saturday. Of course, as we mentioned, Indiana's a standalone game on Friday night. Penn State, an 8.5 point favorite at home against SMU. Texas, a 12 point favorite against Clemson. Ohio State, a 7 point favorite against Tennessee. Matt, we usually like to focus on other Big Ten games going around during the weekend. Let's just talk about the college football playoff because Indiana's in it. We like to give you our picks of the week when we can on this podcast. So, Matt, as you look at the point spreads and the over-unders and the potential for an upset in these other three CFP games, do any of them stand out to you as far as your CFP pick of the week?
Yeah, Texas getting 12 and a half at home against Clemson, I think is quite ridiculous, honestly. Uh, this Clemson team did lay an egg against South Carolina to end the regular season, and then beat, I think, a pretty good SMU team
Mm-hmm.
in the ACC championship. But the only two teams that Clemson has lost to all year long is Clemson, or sorry, is Georgia and South Carolina.
And Louisville.
Did they lose to Louisville?
Yeah,
They did lose to Louisville.
at home.
They got in with three losses. Oh, it's
Because they won
disgusting.
the title, ACC title.
That's right. That's right. Ah, it's disgusting. Anyways, whatever. It doesn't matter. And I don't like Dabo either. Don't get me wrong. But here's the thing. Clemson is battle tested, and I like Klubnik as a QB, and I think he'll be able to do some damage against that Texas defense. And I did not, under any circumstances, like what I saw from that Texas offense against
Yeah.
Georgia's defense, because I think Georgia's defense is very, very, very beatable, especially compared to the Georgia defense the last couple of years. And that Texas offense looked like they had no idea what modern football was or what to do with it. They were all out of sorts. I really think there's something going on in that Texas program behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Like I don't think Ewers' head's in it. I think he's looking behind him at Arch the whole time. I think him getting injured this year was actually probably the worst thing that could happen to that team because they were rolling before Ewers got injured. And then Arch came in, looked fantastic. And then Ewers came back and looked shaky, and they've looked shaky since. So I think Clemson covers. I don't think they win that game, but I don't believe in Texas to go further than the semis. No, I mean, they might not even make the quarters to be edged. They might even make it out of this game. So we'll see about that. I like Ohio State to beat Tennessee at home. I don't believe in is it Jordan Amalaba?
Nico
Nico, sorry.
Iamaliava.
Nico Ingalaya. I don't think Tennessee's QB is experienced enough to be able to go to horseshoe and win a game, even though I think there's going to be 40% Rocky Top supporters there because Tennessee fans are nuts. But I also really enjoy watching Tennessee fans cry. So I'm rooting for Ohio State just because that fan base deserves to be absolutely miserable. Um, and then the last game is SMU Penn State, and I like Penn State to win in Happy Valley. It's a whiteout. SMU, in the history of their football program, has not played in a single environment like they will see in Penn State. I'm serious. They won't. They've never played in anything close to that, let alone it's going to be cold as heck in Happy Valley that night. And those students
It's a day game,
are
but yeah,
ready that evening, that afternoon.
noon. Yeah.
Um, yes. Those Penn State students are going to be. I mean, it's like I don't care how much Penn State is favored by. Just bet on them because that home crowd is worth I think 14 points at least. And
Yeah,
I know some people are gonna be like, it's a whiteout game. Blah, blah, blah. Everybody makes this such a big deal. It is a big deal. Okay.
it
It
is.
legitimately is a big deal. But that
Well,
fan
just
base
their home
turns it
field
up.
advantage, I think, is top three-ish in college football. I think it's the best in the
I think
Big
it's
Ten.
I think it's two. I think LSU's
I was
one.
gonna say
And
LSU.
LSU Death Valley is probably number one. Number two is Happy Valley. It's the valleys. Just don't go play in a valley. Whatever you do, don't play in any valleys. No valleys being played.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere else? Like Florida and Florida State are very, very good when they're good.
When those teams are good, they're in the
But
top five. But
yeah,
but they're
they're
not
at
good
least
right now.
that's
So
that's my
that's
thought.
that's.
Neyland,
But
Rocky Top is great.
hey, Florida just beat Ole Miss at home. So
Yeah.
even when they're
Um,
bad, they're good.
I'm actually going to take the other side of Tennessee, Ohio State. I like Tennessee in this game.
Why?
I like
Why?
Tennessee to cover. I like Tennessee to win. Tennessee's getting 7. You can find a 7.5 out there. I love Tennessee in the trenches. And as we saw with Michigan, if you can expose Ohio State's injured, inexperienced offensive line, you have a shot. And of course, Tennessee offensively is like, 180 degrees better than Michigan, especially from
Well,
throwing the ball. Like,
I mean, there's some high school teams that are better at offense than Michigan are.
like yeah, Warren Central, Cathedral.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's
yeah,
go. Let's line them up.
yeah.
Yeah, as far as an offensive standpoint. Um, and I am not, I am not sure what the vibes are going to be like in the shoe on Saturday night. Um,
Ooh, it's gonna be weird. And also, like, do you know a story about all the Tennessee fans that got tickets? Did you see that?
yeah, well,
Somebody leaked the code, and Tennessee
yeah,
fans got the pre-sale
which
for Ohio
that makes
State.
you ask a lot of other questions, but at the end of the day, like Tennessee, Knoxville to Columbus is not a far trip. And Tennessee fans,
No,
of
it's a
course,
couple
are
hours.
spread out all across the state of Tennessee and all across the sort of that region, and it's an easy trip. It's flyable, it's drivable, um, and
I just hate those people.
I know, I
I
know, I know,
can wait.
Nico.
Actually, can both of those fan bases lose? Can both of them
Oh,
please
I
lose?
mean, this is the
Okay,
killer part
but
of the bracket, though, right? Because Oregon,
spin zone. I know they have to play Oregon, which good luck playing doing that.
good luck to Oregon.
Also, good luck to Oregon. Like I don't know how these teams both are 8 and 9 seeds, but it doesn't matter. Spin zone time. Do we really actually just want Ohio State to win this game? Because then it keeps Ryan Day as head coach at Ohio State. Like, 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 like super spin zone time. Like it. Tennessee win this game. Wow, would be hilarious. Ryan Day would be on the first plane flight out of Columbus the next morning. He is not staying as Ohio State's head coach. And if he loses to Oregon for the second time this year,
Yeah, I don't know. I,
you
I don't
know,
I don't know. I'm kind of I got weird feelings with Ryan Day because like I don't know how he can survive this because like Ohio State's not going to win it all. They're just not.
there's no way. But
You
like
don't
I'm
lose to
saying,
Michigan at the end of November and then win it all. And
I
so that
I, I
implies
agree.
Ohio State's
I
going to
agree
lose another game at some point. And
for
like
sure. You don't lose 3 games in a season, Ohio State. You just don't. I get it. But at the same time, if he does at least go on and beat Tennessee at home, which is a big game, and then you make it competitive with Oregon, who ends up then going on and winning the national championship, fans are going to be pissed at him. He has to beat Michigan next year, but they're not going to fire him for that because he's too good at everything else with the job
that's
for him to be
see, and
fired.
my thing is Ryan Day reeks of like Tom Crean on steroids, where it's like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
like if Tom Crean had made the Final Four, the Elite Eight twice instead of the Sweet 16 twice, right? Like
You know who
I don't
he
know,
is? You know who Ryan Day is? He is the football version of Rick Barnes.
or like Bo Pelini on steroids from Nebraska from 10 years ago, where it's like I get it. It's like I understood why Nebraska moved off of Bo Pelini, but Nebraska just has not been the same since. And they've tried. They've
They
tried
should have kept
numerous
Bo
different
Pelini.
options, and they've had good players, but they struggle to get the 6 wins. And I don't think Ohio State will get to that point. But like, if you fire Ryan Day, and I don't know, you go and there's some Mike Vrabel buzz, go get Mike Vrabel. I don't know. It's just like they are so close right now. And a lot of it is thanks to Ryan Day. It's just you get wrecked by Michigan or Georgia. And it's like not the worst crime in the world, but it is such an awful look. And it's like if you move off of him, I understand you're trying to strive for, ending the season with a national championship every year, but like there is this other side of the coin where you go down to like an 8-9 win team every season, like where LSU is or Florida State is, like not Florida State,
But also, like
LSU.
Ohio State will never be just an 8-win football team with the resources they have. It just
Okay,
won't happen. It's just impossible.
but at the same time,
But
I
like
feel like
also
they've gone,
that fan base deserves a 2-10 season more than any fan base on the history of the earth,
but like
on the surface of the earth.
I feel like they've gone
Maybe
through a
second to
pretty,
Real Madrid fans, but like other than that,
I feel like they've gone through this golden run of coaching too, where it was like Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer. And I think Ryan Day is still one of the really, really good coaches in college football, even though, yes, he has so much egg on his face for so many different reasons. Is
he
it
also makes
possible,
you look like an omelet.
I don't know, isn't there like a 90% chance the next Ohio State coach is worse than both Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer?
What is just Urban Meyer?
Or just Urban Meyer? Like, fine, I'm fine with that.
I'm not fine with that. They're actually good with him.
Yeah, but like
Now they're like,
Urban now is
eh.
so different than Urban Meyer 5, 10 years ago.
Look, that's what they said when they hired Urban Meyer from Florida.
Yeah, that's also true. Any final comments here, Matt, on this Wednesday kickoff Friday?
I will
In
say,
just
last time, I do apologize for my pick. If it ends up being the final score, you guys can hear from me for a couple of weeks. Also, there's a reason we didn't talk basketball on this podcast. And we won't be, hopefully,
We're in
for the near future. Hopefully, we have a lot of distractions with the football team for the next couple of weeks. Very nice. And also, to all those that celebrate, in case we do not do a podcast until next week, Merry Christmas
Merry Christmas to everyone out there.
and Happy
The
Holidays. Yes,
Yes,
everybody
yes,
else.
yes, yes. All of it, all of it. Yeah, we're on a break from IU basketball. Hey, you go out there and you win 5 or 6 in a row, which is in play.
Yeah, we'll start
Um,
talking about them again.
we'll chat about them. For what it's worth, if you guys do want to hear our thoughts on men's basketball, we're sort of doing this a little tongue in cheek. We usually hop on Ant Wright spaces whenever he has one up and running. So if you
Yep,
see a space from Ant Wright, WRIGHT, especially like before or after an IU basketball game,
we'll be in there.
usually when Matt or I are in there talking about the men's basketball team. But look, I get it. Like Notre Dame does have 4 or 5 stars across the field, like 4 star, 5 star guys on the field. Um, they're a good football team. Notre Dame's a good football team, but like a lot of what I'm seeing from them and what I have seen from them is just it's a clear tier lower than Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
Yeah,
And for Indiana to go into this game on Friday night with I honestly think you might get a 30-40% Indiana crowd into Notre Dame Stadium. Like, go out there and kick their ass, man. Like,
yes,
don't
please.
lower the standard. And if you don't make mistakes like you did in Columbus, I really, really think you should be able to come away with a win. I think Indiana should be able to control the line of scrimmage. I think Indiana's got the better quarterback. I think Indiana's got the better receivers. I think Indiana's got the better coach. I think Indiana just has to avoid making crushing mistakes. And if you can do that, I think it's on to Georgia, New Orleans, New Year's Day. But folks, that about wraps
What,
it
what
up.
a timeline. What a timeline.
What a sentence. Folks, that about wraps it up for our 339th episode of the Hoosier Sound and the first one ever talking about a college football playoff game. Thank you
And
so much for
hopefully it's
joining
not the
us.
last one.
We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, Goers.